Welcome. This is our live meditation. I may have mentioned before that one obstacle to meditation, especially for people who practice formal meditation regularly, they may not realize, although whatever method they use, whatever meditation practice they use may be good, potentially helpful, there tends to be, however, always an underlying unexpressed thought, feeling perhaps, that you are doing a meditation. So now you do many things every day, and one of the things you do is you're doing a meditation practice. I'm doing my meditation practice. But what is the aim of meditation? It's supposed to take you into a realization of being. Now we live in a culture, westernized culture, which is not confined to the geographical so-called West these days. Westernized culture is in many places of the globe. We are predominantly focused on, many people exclusively focused on doing. So it seems normal that you include, when you start meditating and even continue that practice, becomes part of the idea in your head that this is something that you have to do. There's a doing idea involved. Doing involves time. Doing has an aim. I'm here, I want to get there, or I'm doing this in order to achieve that. All doing involves time. So with the idea of doing comes the idea of time, that you need to get somewhere with your meditation practice. For example, I want to become enlightened, or maybe you're not as ambitious as that, just I want to still my mind. Now, meditation is a practice that is meant to give you access to a particular state of consciousness. I call it presence. To help you realize that apart from doing, and of course doing is not just external doing, running around on the computer. Doing also is thinking. Every thought you think, you're doing something, you're doing your thinking. Meditation, the aim of meditation is to bring you to a realization of being. So to help you access another dimension within yourself, it's not thinking, and it's not to do with external activities, but you don't go to sleep either. So it's the realization of being, to become aware of your own presence, so to speak, of presence or your presence. These are just words. Right now, instead of thinking we're doing something, I would suggest that an alternative access point to the state of consciousness that is presence is to let go of all doing, or any idea that you have to get somewhere, improve yourself. There is a place for that exists on another dimension that also operates in your life, getting better at things and so on. But then there's something else where any kind of doing doesn't really help. If I'm not saying let go of all your meditation practices, if they're used correctly, they can take you into being also. But for many people, there's an underlying, continuously arising obstacle created by the idea that you're doing something and need to get somewhere. So instead of taking you into being, it just creates more doing. Being and doing, those two dimensions, need to be present, and it's not just meditation is there to help you access being, but in the rest of your life, which is most of your life, 98% of your life, even if you meditate a lot, 95% of your life is still something else. It's not the meditation. There needs to be a balance between being and doing, not as separate things, but coming together. And this is why here I'm not using any technique, and I just want to invite you to become aware of the fact that you are. I wouldn't say that you exist. Of course you exist, but exist, the word itself comes from Latin. Ex means out. Exist means to stand out. Now that's your body exists, your psychological self with its conditioning and thought processes and emotions exists, it's there, it manifests. Whatever is manifested, not necessarily just through the senses, because the more important part of you can't see through the senses, that's the invisible self, psychological self, exists, stands out, is manifested. So it's not so much becoming aware of the fact that you exist, but becoming aware of the underlying being that gives rise to your existence. Something deeper. Becoming aware of yourself right now as I speak, of the essence of who you are, not as a physical body, not as a psychological entity with a past, a personality conditioned by the past. But is there anything deeper than your personality that's conditioned by the past, consists of all thought processes and emotions and opinions and viewpoints, likes and dislikes and so on? So, is there something else, something deeper, something without which all those other things could not manifest? Yes, you can't define it, you can't understand it, there's nothing to understand there. If you examine your historical self, your psychological self, then you may need understanding. You might need to go to a psychotherapist to figure out things that you had not been aware of your psychological self. But here, in that immediate realization of being, I am. There's no doubt about that there is a consciousness here. Prior to whatever arises in that consciousness, there is a presence, a consciousness. Even when I don't think in exact, it's only really when there's a moment of not thinking that I become aware of that consciousness that I am. I become aware of awareness, which is not how it is, it's just language. Awareness, which is who you are, consciousness, which is who you are, becomes aware of itself. There's no duality anymore. Can you feel yourself, your consciousness, your beingness, the I am, without adding anything to the I am, which would be your name, your age, your gender, your position in society, your knowledge, your memories. These are all things you add to I am, but I am is the essence. If you can sense that in your daily life, in the background, then you are always connected with being. You're rooted in that deeper dimension. And then all the comings and goings in your external life and all your doings may still be important, are still important, whether you gain something, you lose something, whether you're healthy or ill, rich or poor. But then there's always something deeper, and from that deeper dimension of beingness, where you can sense your essential reality as that, and not the psychological personality, that means you have found that which is of primary importance, and then you deal with all the things that are of relative or secondary importance, which is everything else in your life. So you are both who you are in this world, the person, the historical entity, the physical, psychological entity, yes, you are that, but more fundamentally, you are the consciousness without which the person would not even be. Would there even be a world without a consciousness perceiving the world? Molecules, atoms, and empty space make up this body, this room, everything, wherever you are, molecules, atoms, and mostly empty space. It's not a world at that level. It's not a room. And then consciousness comes and suddenly there's a world. But molecules and atoms themselves may also be just primordial manifestations of consciousness. And ultimately, humans will realize, first of all, through spirituality, through your own spiritual realization, at some point, perhaps even through science. We're not there yet. That all is consciousness, that the entire universe is an expression of the one consciousness, vibrating, so to speak, different frequencies, from so-called inanimate matter to plant life, to animal life, to human life, and other dimensions of existence. In the same way that you can have water that can be solid, it's ice, seems to have nothing to do with water, it's very hard. And then water exists as a liquid. Water can also exist as vapor. The same thing, at least at different frequencies, one can say. In consciousness, this is just an analogy for consciousness. You are essentially consciousness. And then there's a temporary appearance of you as a person, and that's fine. That's part of miracle of manifested existence, where consciousness breaks up into countless streams. Coming all continuously from the one source. To realize yourself as consciousness, you need to become aware of the space between thoughts. When I stop speaking for brief moments, are you able to stay so present that you do not add any thought to this moment? You add nothing to it. There's just a sensation of, yes, there is still If your eyes are open, you can still see the screen and can see me or the image of me and hear the words, or if your eyes are closed, you can still hear the words. But what else is there? Something deeper, more vital than whatever appears in your sense perceptions. Something without which there would be no sense perception. Oh. Yes. Just a stillness at first. A seeming nothingness. I like that English word, nothingness. The word nothing consists of no thing. An apparent no thingness when you're not thinking. And if you were in a place where it's very totally quiet, nobody is speaking, and your eyes are closed, you can become even more aware of the no thingness. It's just a presence, an underlying presence that has nothing to do with who you are on the level of the person. No. Oh. An alive stillness. And as you become familiar with that, it's not even confined to the so-called inside of you. You may notice that it seems to be both within and without, so the difference between within and without disappears. Mystics would call that the presence of God, that they can suddenly sense. And what is God? Well, you can't even speak about that ultimate source of all things. But the best analogy for what God is and what your relationship with God is, the best analogy for that is the sun, which continuously gives forth life energy, sunlight, an outpouring. The sun is just an analogy. Even the sun is not eternal, but it's the closest you can get. It lasts for a billion years or whatever. It's the closest you can get in a sensory world to that which is eternal. The sun is the source of the very warmth in your body. The sun, if the sun disappeared, everything would immediately, in a few hours, would die here. So, the very warmth in your body is created by the sun indirectly because you eat food, calories, which wouldn't exist without the sun. So the sun shines. The sunlight, is that separate from the sun? Is the sunlight the sun? No, it's not the sun, but it's not separate from the sun. Is the consciousness that you are God? Well, it's not God, but it's the outpouring of God. That's my analogy. It's that which comes continuously from the one source and creates this world continuously. Not 6,000 years ago or even millions of years ago, but continuously, every moment. So the consciousness emanates from the one source. So to say, I am God is both true and not true. You are an extension of that one consciousness, like you are a ray of sunlight, temporarily appearing as a person. And will probably, even this particular ray that temporarily appears as a person, the personal sense after death goes through a metamorphosis. It does not, you don't stay the same personality after death, but I would suggest that something of this particular ray survives beyond death. It's not the personality, but it survives until it completely merges with the source itself. Is experiencing something through the manifested universe. Everything brings back something to the source, like a bee brings back something to the beehive. Don't want to become too, one could talk, it would be love to talk about it for another hour or two, but it's not necessary here. With the realization of yourself as consciousness, in that space between two thoughts, and perhaps might even be a longer space. When you meditate, you become aware of being, and you stay aware. You can look around the room with your eyes are open, you're perceiving sights and sounds, and yet you're not interpreting them as you would habitually do. You're just there as the perceiver, as the consciousness in which these things are perceived. And if you can both be aware of what is there around you and of the deeper space of awareness itself, then your life can be balanced between being and doing, between the manifested and the unmanifested, between the world and God. This presence that you sense is enormously liberating. It frees you from the prison of believing that who you are fundamentally is the person. To be trapped in a personal, exclusively personal sense of self, personal selfhood. It's a terrible way to live. And if you're connected with the depth dimension, the being, beingness, presence, then the person has its place, can be honored, and can experience and do things in this world. Learn new things. Have goals and ambitions, why not? But no longer looking for liberation through achieving this or that, no longer looking for ultimate fulfillment through some idea that when I achieve this, then I will be complete and happy. No, just participate in the dance of existence. The universe wants to create. It wants expansion. But why is it that so often it seems to put obstacles in the path of expansion? Things go wrong. Difficult situations, difficult people, loss, confusion. Why do some people experience life as one damn thing after another? Why does all these things wrong? Why doesn't life leave me alone? Why does expansion seem to be blocked so often, if the universe wants expansion, which it does? The universe not only wants to expand externally, it also expands internally. So with every obstacle, potentially, there's a deepening within. So it goes in two directions. So if somebody is, let's say a child grows up with a handicap, or very difficult life situation, it doesn't have to be a child, or any human being encounters a huge obstacle. Either they overcome the obstacle on the external level, or they transcend that obstacle on an inner level. So, this is a universal thing. Just to give one example, let's say a child is weak, gets bullied at school, is very unhappy because of that, then the child could generate so much energy that he or she would take up martial arts, go to a teacher, just as it's shown in those movies, and then eventually he or she can defeat the bully, generated the energy that would not have been generated if the bully had not been there. So it becomes stronger on that. That's expansion in a way. Or the child is just too weak, it doesn't generate expansion on that level. It can never defeat the bully. But the energy goes within, develops other abilities, perhaps the ability to be creative, to think, to create. And 20 years later, the child that was the bully works in some menial job, and the child that was bullied is a great creator. There's expansion too. Or becomes a spiritual teacher. So the universe wants to expand, but it also wants you to experience obstacles to expansion, which are part of the expansion. It goes in two directions. So welcome all the obstacles in your life, the obstacles to whatever And collectively, if you listen to the news, continuously things go wrong dreadfully. On the planet. It happens to be the case that the news focuses on all the things that go wrong. It doesn't focus on the things that don't go wrong. So of course a distorted version of what life is like. But undoubtedly things do go wrong. Humanity is being challenged sometimes through factors that seem to have nothing to do with things just come at you, and other factors created by humanity's unconscious mind, dysfunctional, egoic thinking. And so it's only through experiencing the effects of that unconsciousness collectively, if you look at humanity as a whole for a moment, as one single expression of consciousness divided into billions of little entities, one huge array of consciousness divided into billions of small arrays of consciousness, one of them is you. So humanity is evolving. One consciousness expressing itself as the human being is undergoing a process of evolution. It's like birthing. And gradually, it's becoming more conscious. Seems to take a long time. But every human being reaches a point where the consciousness accelerates. That's when you become where you consciously embark on the spiritual path as you are doing. That means your primary teacher is no longer suffering. It may still come in, but it's no longer your primary teacher. You grow, you awaken voluntarily without being pushed into it through suffering. But you have been, otherwise you wouldn't be. You've had your suffering. There may be a bit more, but not like before. And for many of you, suffering is coming to an end. It doesn't mean that you don't face problems anymore, but you don't transform them into suffering. The I Am practice. I am. There's no doubt about that. Everything else could be an illusion. And one way of looking at it is to say, well, it is a kind of illusion. Because nothing lasts for long. Everything here is impermanent. Be aware in your daily life of the gap between two thoughts, so that your mind doesn't drag you along in an incessant stream of involuntary and compulsive thinking. Invite these gaps into your life. So by looking at something without interpreting it, by listening to something without interpreting it, by taking conscious breaths occasionally. Observe the air flowing into the body, out of the body, no thought. You become aware of the underlying presence. And only then do you become a true human being. So humans are still undergoing an evolutionary process. They're not finished. They're not even fully human yet, most of them. You're fully human when you are conscious not only of your humanness, but also of your beingness. And when the two come together, you are a human being. Before, you're only a human, unaware of being, only a personality. A human being lives in two worlds, the manifested and the unmanifested. And that would mean when humans more and more humans begin to live like that, of course the world would look very different, the world that we create. So, be not only human, but be the being. So you become a true human being.